Hi everyone, my name is Sandiswa and welcome to Tax Shelter. In this channel, we simplify tax for small businesses and individuals. If that's your thing, then subscribe. Click subscribe now, please. Thank you. Okay. Please don't take this as tax advice or financial advice or whatever advice that you think it might be. This is just tips. And this is also just to simplify tax and make it easier and simpler for people in South Africa. In South Africa, tax is quite it changes a lot, and because everyone pays it at some point and they need to submit a return and whatnot, I really think it's something that should be more accessible to everyone. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Now, what am I going to be discussing today? So you know when you submit your income tax return and then the next thing you get a notification that your tax return requires manual intervention, or maybe you don't get an assessment, and then when you go check, there's like a little note there that says you need your tax return requires manual intervention. I know most of the times people go to panic mode. So what I'm going to be discussing today is why does your tax return, or what are some of the reasons your tax return requires manual intervention, and what can you do? So like I said earlier, normally when you submit an income tax return, immediately or within 5 minutes or whatever the case, you get your assessment, right? An assessment is that summary that SARS gives you after you've submitted an income tax return. So basically an assessment will show all your incomes, all your exemptions, all your deductions, and the tax that you need to, the tax that you've paid, and the tax that you owed SARS. And then at the end you will have a refund, or you will owe SARS, or it will be nil. No one owes anyone anything, which is in most cases what we want, or what I think you should want. But I know most people are excited by refunds, and yeah, people like refunds, even though it means that SARS has been holding on to your money for at least a 12-month period, and they just kept it with no interest whatsoever. But I don't want to accept in situations whereby there are, like for instance, you have, okay, let me not talk about refunds because I don't want to upset anyone, but I do want to say that in situations whereby you don't have medical aid, or the use of a vehicle from your employer, or you're not getting any money for whatever reason other than your basic salary, then getting a refund just means that you were being overtaxed by your employer, and in other words, SARS was taking your money, using it for whatever they want to use it for, and you weren't getting interest. So in other words, you could have taken that money and saved it somewhere else. But then some people argue that, well, chances are if I had received that money right away, I wouldn't have kept it. So it's a nice surprise, which I understand. But yeah, anyway, let me leave refunds alone and back to our topic for today. So what I was saying is, normally when you submit your income tax return, you will get your assessment immediately. But now also, before I get into reasons why your tax return might require manual intervention, I just want to make a quick disclaimer. Manual intervention, verification, two different things. Please don't confuse those. A manual intervention is when SARS needs to do certain checks before they give you your assessment. Verification, you get your assessment, but then SARS requires more information from you. In other words, SARS saying that, okay, fine, we're giving it to you, we're accepting the information that you told us, but then we want to dig deeper. So in other words, you said that, okay, you had expenses from your rental property of 20K. Can you give us maybe proof of about 10K of those expenses? That's what a verification is. But when it comes to a manual intervention, SARS is like, we get what you've given. So one of the reasons that your tax return, in fact this is the most popular one amongst my clients, you will find that you have a tax directive, right? But then SARS did not submit an RIP 5 for that tax directive. So I've also done a video on tax directives and the different types and whatnot and what they are. Just check out the video. I did it recently this month. So just check it out if you want to understand more what a tax directive is and when do you need one, etc, etc, etc. So one of the reasons, and the most popular one amongst my clients, is when there is a tax directive that they've received, one, but then there is no corresponding RIP5 that has been submitted for that tax directive. So whenever you get a tax directive, there must be an RIP5 for that tax directive. Now, a mistake that SARS and the funds make all the time, in fact not SARS, the funds, and there's a certain fund that makes it almost all the time, they're just terrible at it, and it's the government fund. But anyway, yeah, so what normally happens is these funds, right, say for instance you change jobs in 2022 June, right? So that means then you are in the 2023 tax season. Change jobs, all the processes happen during that time and whatnot, and then your fund issues tax directive for whatever lump sum that you are getting or transferring, etc. Then what normally happens, this other fund, what they normally do is they will issue an RIP5 for the following year, because their processes sometimes are very slow. Even though the whole thing took place in the 2023 tax year, for whatever reason they will issue an RIP5 for the 2024 tax year. So now you have a tax directive for the 2023 tax year, but then the RIP5 is in 2023. So there's bound to be a problem then, because for each tax directive there needs to be a corresponding RIP5. This is what normally happens almost 99% of the time. This is what happens, and it's frustrating. And the reason why it's frustrating is because even though sometimes it's not your fault, you can't submit the return because of the manual intervention, and in most cases you normally have to go back to the fund and be like, listen, can you fix A, B, C and D for me, etc., in which cases sometimes it takes forever. Frustrating, number one, especially for people that have refunds, that know that they're going to be getting refunds, because now you're not getting your refund that you were supposed to get, in some cases that you were counting on getting. Number two, it's frustrating because SARS doesn't stop with the penalties. So that means you have additional work that you have to do after you submit your return. You have to now go explain to SARS in order for them to write off the penalties and be like, hi SARS, listen, I know that the deadline for submitting returns was this, but then I couldn't submit because of these reasons. So you have to explain, provide proof and whatnot. And in most cases, SARS will write off the penalties. But then the whole process and the whole admin and the time that you now have to invest into this return because someone just didn't do their job right, it's actually, it's not nice, but it is what it is. So again, like I said, if you are in that situation, don't panic. It might, so instead of a verification, in some cases SARS will request a manual intervention from you for your return rather than doing a verification. Now, I've seen in cases where, say for instance, you have rental income, you put in all your incomes, you put in all your expenses. There are situations whereby people will add maybe one of two zeros when they're saying, maybe they want to say they spent 10,000 Rand in repairs and maintenance, but then they end up putting, I don't know, 1 million. Maybe they by accident, and then they go and submit, and then the next thing they have like, I don't know, 700,000 Rand in, or they were, if the assessment were to issue, they'd have like 700,000 Rand in refund. So immediately I think the SARS system picks up that this doesn't make any sense, or there must be something wrong. So in situations like that, again, one, what you need to do when SARS flags your return for a manual intervention, check, is there a tax directive that you would have received that maybe there's no RIP5 for. Number 2, go through your return and check if maybe you didn't put an extra 0 or 2 where you were not supposed to. Then if you did, then you can just request a correction and then submit the correction information. Chances are SARS is going to do a verification, but then a manual intervention than a verification for me is better, because a verification, there are time limits and those things and whatever, and normally verifications are specific. They'll be, SARS will ask for certain information like we want A, B, C, and D. But for a manual intervention, you are sort of like left in the dark. You don't know what is wrong. You don't know what you did wrong. You don't know what SARS is checking. So it sort of like causes like an anxiety and whatnot. But again, I would recommend that when there's a manual intervention and you know you're not doing something shady, that you don't panic. You just do your checking and otherwise, if you found this information, I'm done. If you found this information helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could share it, subscribe to the channel, like, guys. If you have any questions, do leave them in the comment section. Otherwise, thank you.